I'm Terra Lopez. I'm the community manager and head of artist partnerships at Backline. For those who don't know me, we have a very special fireside chat today with the SONA Foundation. As most of you probably know, Backline is a resource hub for the music industry, and we aim to provide the industry with as many tools and resources as possible to support mental health and wellness. We've teamed up with the SONA Foundation, a nonprofit community-centered arts organization that is dedicated to providing mental health, financial well-being, career development, and emergency funding for songwriters and music creators for this very, very special fireside chat that we're starting to do every month. And it's specifically centered around mental health for songwriters. Today, we are having a very important conversation about addiction, recovery, and sobriety, and have some very special guests with us today. We have singer, songwriter, Peabody Emmy Award winning singer-songwriter and the co-founder of Songwriters of North America. She's known for her work with her band Letters to Cleo and has composed music for so many TV shows and animations I can't even begin to list. We have Kay Hanley. We also have the incredible singer-songwriter Bonnie McKee. Bonnie has written #1 hits for literally, it seems, everyone. Katy Perry, Britney Spears, Cher. Not to mention Bonnie is an incredible artist herself. We also have artist, songwriter, yoga teacher, and coordinator for the SONA Foundation, Arielle Silver. And lastly, we have Backline clinical director, Ari Jacobson. Ari's a huge part of the Backline team, helping grow our clinical network tremendously over the last 2.5 years. He also has extensive experience working with addiction and recovery and will be a valuable addition to this conversation. Arielle's going to be moderating the chat box, so if you have any questions, feel free to just throw them in the chat. We'll make sure to get to them. So yeah, I guess let's start our conversation about addiction, recovery, sobriety. First off, always want to kick it off with, how are you all doing today?
Awesome. Really great.
Happy to be here.
So grateful to have you here. Obviously, we're talking about a heavy topic, but an important topic nonetheless. And so I want to ask you both, Kay and Bonnie, you both have been in the industry for a while and have worn many hats. I'm wondering if you two would like to talk or share about your personal journey specifically with addiction and recovery within the music industry.
I was gonna say, take it away, Kay. Hi, I'm Bonnie McKee. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I am a singer-songwriter. I've been in the industry since I was 16 years old. I'm a lot older now, but I won't tell you how much. And when I first came into this business, I came in as an artist, and I was really heavy into my drinking and using and all of that. And I think being a young person in the industry is difficult, and I think I don't think it's gotten any better. But you know, everybody's telling you that you're the greatest thing and you're the next Madonna and you're the whatever. And then when things fall apart, which is really a rite of passage, I feel like everyone, I know all of the greats have had record deals and been dropped. For me, that was a devastating experience. And I thought that my life was over. And I slipped more and more heavily into using and drinking. And it took me years to kind of come around. And then I started writing songs for other people, kind of as a stepping stone to get back to my artist stuff. And I realized that not everybody gets a second chance. And that was like a big catalyst for me deciding to get sober. I've been sober for 11 years now. It'll be 12 in February. And I realized that, you know, the drinking and the using was making my career more difficult to navigate. I had higher stakes, and I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired, I guess. So I got sober, and I know a lot of people have talked about the fear of, if I get sober, am I going to not be creative anymore? I can assure you that's not a thing. In fact, it made it so much easier for me to get my work done and show up and give it my best. And so I'm just a grateful, recovering alcoholic and addict. And that's kind of where I come from. That's kind of my story.
And my name is Kay Hanley. It's such an honor to be here with all of you. And Bonnie and I have been sharing our recovery for about the same amount of time. I just celebrated 12 years of sobriety this past June. But before that, things had gotten pretty messy in my life. Just to sort of, the preface is that, like, I'm a nice Irish Catholic girl from Boston. So whether I was in the music industry or not, chances are I was going to end up talking about either getting sober or, there's lots of us, I guess, is what I'm saying, from that part of the world. I joined my cousin's rock band when I was 17, when I was like a senior in high school. And then I started writing songs a few years later, and got a record deal when I was 25, and have not waited a table, or, this has been my job ever since, through, for better and for worse. And the thing that I always kind of like to mention is that, if I worked at the bank, or, if I were a surgeon or whatever the case may be, the consequences that I was having by the time I was 25 would have forced me to take a look at my drinking. But because of the industry that I'm in, I was really rewarded very generously for my behavior. Like, I could jump off stage and punch somebody in the face, or like just, throw up on the sidewalk, or make out with someone else's boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. And I would be celebrated for that. Whereas I would be fired if I did those things as like a professional in any other industry. And that really didn't change after, the band broke up, or I stopped touring. The band stopped touring when I got married and had my first child. And then I had another child. And then I had, we moved to Los Angeles and had all the things that you are supposed to want, Studio City, walk the kids to school, and my drinking got, I always like to say that, I spent 35 years in the music business, and the moms of Studio City brought me to my knees, because we would always just walk to each other's houses after school, oh, third grade was so hard today. We need to open a bottle. And so anyway, my drinking was just different than other people's. My using of drugs was just different from other people's. And once I started, I couldn't stop, and I couldn't predict where things were, if there was going to be a really great time or if there was going to be a lot of trouble. And towards the end, the trouble outweighed the good times by a great, great margin. And I started showing up in rehabs and detoxes, and did that shuffle for a long time. Relapsing in multiple rehabs is part of my particular experience. It doesn't have to be everybody's, but that's mine. And I just say that because a lot of times it takes more than one shot. Addiction is extremely difficult to, I don't know if we ever overcome it. My addiction can leapfrog into other areas very easily, but I don't drink or use, and I haven't. Again. Hi, that's my cat. He loves when I'm on Zoom to perform and jump around. So 12 years ago, I went to my last rehab, and did the hardest thing of my life, which was to give up my best friend, which was booze.
Wow. Thank you both so much for sharing your stories. It's incredible that the stories are kind of parallel, 11, 12 years roughly each, which is just incredible. What were some of the early signs or challenges that you faced in recognizing the need for recovery? Was there a turning point moment for you both? Or, Bonnie, you mentioned you were just tired of being tired. Did it just accumulate? Like, what kind of led you to realizing, like, I need to get some help?
For me, I started drinking and using at like 12 years old. And so by the time I got into the industry, I already was like full blown in it. And I knew from the first time that I drank that like this was not good for me. I liked it way too much. And I could like kind of see all of my dreams flash before my eyes and be like, ooh, is this gonna happen? And miraculously I still battled through and made it. But I when I was signed to that first record deal, I remember there was a moment where, I mean, there were many moments. I was the girl throwing up at the holiday Warner Brothers Christmas party. I was, sleeping through sessions and, or being like passed out on the couch. I remember I went to the TRL studios when that was still around, to interview to be like a VJ or whatever. And I was so nervous, and I was underage. And I remember asking my like A&R like handler person from the label, I was like, I need you to get me some beer. And she was like, absolutely not. And I like threw a fit, which like really isn't in my character. Like I'm not like a diva. That's not really my vibe. But I threw a fit that day until she finally brought me some beer. And I really owe her an amends, because and then I remember like drinking beer and being like, see, now everything's fine. And now the show can go on. Like, and I was just so like immediately ashamed by that. And there were just a lot of moments like that throughout my career. But when I finally decided that it was time, I had, I was working on the Britney Spears album. Actually, I was working on the Femme Fatale album, and we were working at Conway, and it was a really fun environment, whatever. I was like so excited to be there. I hadn't had any hits yet, so I was still struggling and really needed to be in that room. And I was working with a big producer who was DJing in Vegas. And so we left straight from the studio and went to Vegas, had a wild night. And then I came back to the studio because I had left my car there and everything. And I remember like being like throwing up in the bathroom and being like passed out on the couch. And then like Max Martin coming in and like sitting on the couch next to me and like bringing me like a fresh coconut with a straw in it and being like, you good? And I was like, this isn't cute anymore. Like this, this is too important. Like I have to be present for this. I can't fuck this up. So that was like one of many moments that really made me realize that I needed to get help. But it took me many years of trying and taking breaks and experimenting with controlled drinking, where like, oh, only on the weekends, oh, only special occasions, only beer and wine, whatever it was. And I just realized how much mental energy I was spending trying to, manage my drinking. Whereas as soon as I decided like, hey, I have an allergy to this, like this does not agree with me. Once I cut it out, it was just so much simpler. My life got so much simpler, and I could use all of that energy that I was spending trying to control myself, towards things that could actually do something for me. So.
Like Bonnie, I should have known right out of the gate that that alcohol was not going to be good for me. But because I love the way it felt, like the minute I tried my first drink, I thought that like it was the answer to everything. Like it really was my medicine. And and I kind of chased that feeling for the rest of my life. And it wasn't always terrible. Like I had a great time partying with my, over the course of many, many years. I got sober when I was 43, and I'm 55 now. So I spent a lot of time, drinking and partying and traveling the world and doing these very exciting things. And a lot of it was really fun. The problem is that the equation of, like I was saying earlier, like the equation of like fun to problems started to be inverted. And then once I had kids and, a lot of responsibilities and a marriage and a, and a career, my writing partner, Michelle Lewis, and I, we had already been working together we had started working together when we both moved to LA in like 2004. And I didn't get sober till 2011. So Michelle went through a lot. I have made proper formal amends to Michelle. But the stakes, like Bonnie said, the stakes had risen substantially since I was a teenager. And when I didn't know, other people knew that I needed to stop before I knew that I needed to stop. Even though in my heart, like I knew that I couldn't, that I was drinking myself to, I knew I was going to die, but I just could not imagine my life without the shift of like a pill or a drink or a sniff or whatever the case may be. I needed to feel different than I felt. And I didn't know how to do that except for by putting something in my body to do that. The end for me came when my husband asked me to leave our house, our home, and literally called my parents and said, like, you need to leave. I called your parents. When someone's calling your mommy and daddy and you're 43 years old, there's there's something wrong. And the end of that story, it's sad, but it's happy. My marriage did not survive, unfortunately, but my family did. And it's only because he took that step to say, you need to leave so I can protect myself and our children from you. And when people stopped co-signing my bullshit was when that saved my life.
Wow. Thank you both so much for your vulnerability and sharing, some of the roughest times of your life with us. Bonnie, you said something earlier that really resonated as an artist myself. And I've also been on the major labels and dropped from the major labels and had that roller coaster of feeling the need. Society has crafted this narrative that artists must suffer in order to create their best work. And unfortunately, a lot of folks have bought into that over, throughout the course of time. You were saying that you actually experienced more creativity once you got sober. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe that experience or that realization that you could actually be more creative without?
Yeah. Look, I one thing that I always tell people when they voice this concern about like, oh, I'm not gonna like be creative anymore, blah 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 blah. Like I had plenty of years of bullshit and of dark, twisty, whatever, and I always have that well to pull from. Like I don't need to live in the chaos to pull from it, and I also didn't need to have even lived that to pull from that. You can pull inspiration from other people's stories, from worrying about other people, from watching movies. Like you don't need to live the like quote unquote rock star lifestyle to get to draw inspiration from it. There's plenty of horrible things that happen in people's lives to pull from without having to live in the chaos. And I think for many years, being the hot mess was my identity. And Kay, similar to what you were saying, it was like, I could not imagine ever living without it. In my head, I was like, I'm going to party till I'm like, a little old lady. Like I'm going to be that like little old lady on the porch that's just like, going nuts. I don't need to do that. But the shift for me through getting sober and like my kind of explosion of creativity or whatever. I mean, I was still creative when I was drinking. Like it's a different kind of thing. But I feel like I got my years in of things that I can draw from experiences. But what I realized was once I got sober, like I was getting out of bed in the morning. I was showing up. I was able to complete a thought. I was able to stop avoiding my responsibilities, because that was ultimately what I was doing while I was drunk or hungover or whatever, was just not being present. And so being able to show up and like have people not be disappointed in me, and that lifted a lot of the shame for me, because shame really held me back and really made me insecure. And also just like the day-to-day functioning of just, like I said, being able to show up, not being hungover, and like finishing a thought and being a closer, being able to actually finish something.
Yes.
So yeah.
Ari, what kind of support systems are essential for those in recovery, specifically within the music industry? Because like both Bonnie and Kay have mentioned, this industry sort of celebrates and glorifies being a hot mess at times, or having that be your identity, or being messy, or it absolutely supports it and glorifies it. So what kind of support systems would you say to those listening are essential to have?
Sure. And I want to highlight, I think we mentioned a really important point, that when sobriety happens, many cases you feel like you've lost that best friend, or you've lost that resource, you've lost that coping skill that has really, for lack of a better term, worked for quite some time. So building a really healthy support system around you is really replacing an unhealthy support system that has worked almost too well at times. So there's obviously the easy ones that people can look into, the AA groups, the NA groups, and those are great, and I would never downplay. Those programs have saved more lives than we could ever count, but they're not for everybody. So I think being able to find just other like-minded people who understand what you're going through. They don't necessarily have to be equally as sober as you. It's always encouraged to find people who are in a similar mindset, so that way just simple like activities are going to be sober-minded, and to be able to do things and plan, so that way if you're put into a situation, you know that you have some of those resources and support systems around you already built in. But even just to be able to have somebody in the music industry who understands that, like, listen, on our rider on the tour, like, I just don't want beer in the green room. And it's okay to ask for things like that. Or if you are able to be able to say, like, I'd like to be able to put in this part of the green room or in a different green room that is just going to remain a sober area. Because the likelihood is there's going to be other people on the tour who probably are going to fall into a similar mindset, or even just starting to even dabble with the idea of what sobriety could look like. So you might find that there are people who are actually more supportive into beginning their journey with you as you are continuing yours. So it's just being able to find people who are really understanding of what you're going through, and somebody that you can look at and say, I'm having a rough time, I'm having a bad day, or I just, I'm really craving having a beer and I don't want to do it. So can we take a walk? Can I meditate for 10 minutes? Can I do something else that's just available to me? And with other people who understand it, so that way you don't feel like you've lost your best friend. You feel like you've gotten rid of a bad habit.
Arielle, in what way do you think that obviously we're doing it right now by having these conversations, but in what other ways do you feel the music community can raise awareness about addiction and mental health issues, which oftentimes can be linked?
Yeah, first of all, Terra, I want to just thank you. You always do such a great job facilitating these conversations. And, just coming from the SONA Foundation, it's just an honor always to be a part of these fireside chats with Backline and with you. So I just wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to thank you for that. I think, first of all, these conversations are so important. And, they're happening in small pockets and on larger, in larger venues as well now. think that they need to continue. I've been at numerous lunches, dinners, events, etc. in our industry, as we all have, where alcohol is in itself, a central, it almost takes up as much air in the room as the music part of it. And, I think that we can do better at acknowledging the fact that that's speaking to some people in a fine way, and it's speaking to other people in an extremely negative way. And in any case, it's not really the point of why we're together anyway. Yeah, as I'm listening to Bonnie and Kay, both of you sharing your stories, first of all, thank you both so much for being candid and sharing your journey. That pivot moment is such an interesting one, where you were in one place in your life, something happened, and it changed your trajectory. It changed your way of being in your personal life and also in your professional life. And I'm curious about that moment, and how the music industry in general and families and communities can support people at that exact moment when you are losing something, that might have been what you were thinking about at the time, how you were losing this thing, and not yet through it enough to see what you were gaining. I'm curious to hear from you guys.
That's a really good question. All of these questions are great. And and Terra, I echo what Arielle said about your excellent questioning abilities on these things. They're always so interesting to participate in or to listen to. So the question is about like what you're losing versus what you're gaining, the fear of that, or what, how can I best answer the question? It was.
Yeah, Kay, in that moment when your husband called your parents, and that pivot moment in your life, probably in that moment you were facing one direction and had not yet turned around to face everything that could be in a life of sobriety. Right. And I'm wondering what helped you in that time. He made the call, and maybe was just like just blew you in that direction, or maybe it was more of a shove. But what else helped you in that time to turn away from the thing that was really holding you back, and allow you to face the thing that would help you grow?
Right. And you're absolutely right. I did not see it that way at the time. I didn't see it as like, well, this will be hopeful to me. I didn't think it was going to be helpful. I was extremely angry, and things actually got worse after that, because as I was saying, I don't think Michelle would mind if I shared a little bit of our story, but by the end of all of the relapses, Michelle actually had to we had to sort of abort our business relationship for about a year, because she had to create boundaries between the two of us. So I was losing my marriage, I was losing my children, I was losing my career, I was losing, and the only thing that helped was the idea that like, I didn't care if I like lived or died or any of that. I didn't care but I knew that if I could, by the time I went to that last rehab, the thing that kept me going was that if I could stay sober long enough, that I could make it up to the people that I loved, because I had just been such a source of pain and worry and anxiety and anger to people for years by that time. And I just, this is not a good reason to stay sober, to make it up to people. Like, that's not a great reason. But for me, it was necessary, because I wouldn't do it I didn't want to do it for myself. I didn't care if I didn't care what happened to me. And, you know, it's interesting how it all worked out. All the ways that I usually make things up to people, like I'm so, you know, I'm really great with like, you know, I'm a good talk because I'm a lyricist. So like I can come up with stories for days that will make people feel, you know, like to get out of like a jam or get out of a jackpot, to get myself out of trouble, to like excuse, you know, to help people understand why I did what I did. And none of those things, I couldn't deploy any of those tricks anymore. They stopped working. So I actually had to like just like shut my mouth and actually not drink for a couple of years before I became the sort of person who, like Bonnie, what you were saying about like, you know, showing up, you know, on time, like showing up for things. Like I lost the ability to be on time for anything. And I lost the ability to be a dependable person. And, you know, for every day that I didn't drink, for every time that I showed up on time when I said I was going to, it's like I repaired just a little bit more of the damage, and I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to use my words at all. I just did what I then just did the next indicated thing, just took the one foot in front of another. And you know, we're talking about what are the other things that help? Like if sobriety wasn't more awesome than drinking, I wouldn't do it, you know. And whatever I was replacing alcohol, whatever life I was replacing with the old one had to be way better than the one, even, and not just anecdotally on paper, like it had to feel better. And to me, I have found an incredible life. And especially, you know, the things that Bonnie was saying, especially as it pertains to my work, as it pertains to my motherhood, as it pertains to my ability to be like a friend and a sister and a daughter, like just every single column, every single lane in my life feels great to me, where I just didn't even, I live to not feel things. And I don't want to say, you know, if I mean, personally for me, my story is that like I did live to drink, like I really did. You don't have to feel that way to recognize that your relationship to alcohol or drugs is harming your life. It doesn't have to be that extreme. For me, it was, but I know a lot of people for whom it was just the remorse of waking up in the morning and having sent that text message that you shouldn't have sent, or, you know, like just in doing things like that you wouldn't do if you weren't drinking, if you weren't using. So.
Yeah, I think as far as like things that the industry, well, not specifically the industry necessarily, but can do to help people that are at that kind of turning point. I don't know. I've seen a lot of companies like labels or publishing companies or whatever, sort of like get him to the Greek, you know, where it's like, oh, this is our genius person and we want them to perform, and they are requiring that they have alcohol or they have drugs or whatever it is they need. And so we're not gonna ask any questions, even if you see somebody struggling. And so I think that, you know, it would be nice if, I mean, it's hard because it's like, it's a self-diagnosed disease, alcoholism and addiction. It's not something that someone else can really tell you are, even if you clearly are. And I've definitely done that in my life where I'm like, you're an addict. And I'm like, that's not really my place to say. But I think that, you know, people who are on the teams of some of these artists or writers, just being aware of that, and maybe, I don't know, I had to stop doing late night sessions because late night sessions often meant that there was going to be a lot of weed, or there was going to be, you know, and so I tried to be more conscious about the kind of environments that I was put in. Or, if there are writing camps where you're going and staying in a house with a bunch of people, or you're going somewhere, maybe not like encouraging the drinking so much. I mean, look, I love good, clean fun now. And like, I encourage anyone, whether you're like struggling or not, to try just like a sober celebration. Like it kind of, I don't know, there's something really sort of nostalgic and fun about it, where you feel like a little kid again, where it's like, I don't know, remember you used to have fun at slumber parties without being fucked up, and like I love a wholesome activity. Like Ari was saying, going for a walk and having people around you that are down for doing things that don't revolve around drinking or using, I think is good. And I think similarly, talking about parties, like industry parties and stuff, like I know my publisher does like yoga on Sunday, like they'll do like a yoga day or whatever it is, where it's like we can still have a community and have, kind of fellowship within the creative community that doesn't revolve around, vino or whatever the hell. So yeah, I think just having like more places where that don't revolve around alcohol would be great.
I do love seeing this shift. I love hearing about the yoga, the publishing company presenting that. And with Backline, we also try to do and throw events or wellness spaces that are not centered on alcohol and more so just on wellness. And I think we are starting to see that shift in the industry, and it is beautiful. And also both of your stories provide such hope. I love to it's just amazing to hear, that the life that y'all have and the lanes that you're in now are full of creativity and positivity and that energy. It's really beautiful to hear, and also very hopeful to hear that, you can be at your worst and your rock bottom and you can get out of that. And touching on that, Ari, for those listening, whether now or later on when it's uploaded on YouTube, can you share some tangible recovery tools for those that are seeking help?
Sure. And I think something that's really important to mention is we've been talking so far about how people sometimes experience what we call this aha moment of this, like, it's time for me to quit, or but the reality is that aha moment, for many people who have that moment, almost consider themselves lucky to be able to have it. There have been many people who unfortunately have lost everything and have not been able to recover, or have lost their lives, or other instances where that aha moment hasn't been as available. So one of the things that we're kind of talking about is being able to understand that there are people around you who are going to share some opinions, and it's almost impossible to tell somebody that they are an addict. But to start introducing the idea of, we've noticed that you've had some problems with this, we've noticed that you're not on time, or that we've noticed that you're relying on alcohol a lot, is a fair conversation to have with somebody. So for people who are struggling, I think the number one thing is building that support network around you, that at least you're allowing people to provide you feedback. And feedback is not always praise. And in the industry, it's very common to get praise for being on stage and performing and everything else that goes along with it. And the negatives in many cases are focused around certain aspects of the performance or the music or whatever it might be, and are not always based around decisions you're making late night with that text message that you should have never sent. So the number one thing is being able to surround yourself with people who can understand. The next thing is really developing a very good list of activities and other skills that once you are starting to notice that you're having any sort of craving, whether it's a trigger of, we just drove by a liquor store and had a big sign out of the liquor that I used to drink, or I'm going to go into this venue and I always used to have a drink before going on stage, kind of planning out those times to say, if I'm feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, if I'm a 3 and below, then I know I can do a quick meditation. If I'm a 4, 5, or 6, then maybe I need to take a walk and remove myself from the situation. And if I'm a 7 to 10, this is what I have to do. And it is a very intentional playlist, or it's a very intentional worksheet that you can find online of, listing out your, doing some positive affirmations, or just something to switch your mindset away from that craving. The idea is that you're not always going to be able to control that first initial craving that pops into your head, that impulsive thought. But that second thought that comes in, you can really control and how to combat that. So starting to focus on positives or being a little bit more like overly optimistic about things of this is a really tough moment right now, and I know I'm going to be okay. It might feel ridiculous at the beginning, but the more you do it, the more your brain starts to actually believe it and trust yourself. So as you start to develop these things, practicing and making sure that you actually have these skills ready to go, and you're not scrounging together at the very last minute going, oh my gosh, I have a craving. What should I be doing right now?
Such great points.
I love that. Kay, Bonnie, what are some tools or practices that help you in your day to day, whether it's just for self-care or if you are triggered?
I participate in a 12-step program. That's the path that I took, and that really has helped me a lot. And I've made a lot of sober friends, and it's a beautiful community where I can phone a friend when I'm feeling that way. Or if I'm going to an event and I'm feeling triggered, then I can phone a friend and bring another sober person with me. That's how the 12-step program works, is that it relies a lot on community and one alcoholic helping another. And so that has been my path. Again, it's not for everybody, but that is one way to do it. I also, well, this is more about creativity, so let's stay on this topic. Go ahead, Kay, what do you do?
Well, I agree. 12-step programs are not for everyone. A lot of people are kind of spooked by what they consider a religious aspect to 12-step programs. I'm an atheist, and so I was very sort of like, no, thank you. But it's interesting. You do what you do. One does what they must. And I wound up getting sober with the help of a 12-step community as well. But while acknowledging that's hard for a lot of people, it's what worked for me, clearly what has worked for Bonnie. And other sources of support have been different over the last 12 years. I kind of switched addictions to Diet Coke and Takis every night. I don't, those spicy corn thingies. I ate those. And I would go to a meeting and I'd pick up from 7-Eleven a big gulp of Diet Coke and a bag of Takis, and I'd go home and watch crime shows. And that was like really that's what floated my boat for the first couple of years. And then, and then things started getting, my choices for how to self-soothe became healthier. And, now I'm really into, hot spin, and and that makes me feel amazing, and eating good food. And another thing that has been really helpful to me is helping other women alcoholics get sober. If I'm thinking about somebody else, I'm not thinking about myself, and that is whenever I'm not thinking about myself, that is a huge gift, because thinking about myself is, this is a very small town with very few places to go. And so, a lot of times I'll wind up in let's get fucked up land. So if I'm, the less time I stay out of here, helping another person, listening generously to their story, the more I'm reminded of my own. And, alcoholics and or people with substance abuse disorder, we speak the same language. No matter where on the scale we are, we all understand each other very, very well. So that's been really helpful to me.
I love that. We have a question actually from someone. And they want to know, how do you both balance, we kind of started talking about this, but also, of course, we want to talk about mental health, as it's all linked. How do you both balance your work and self-care in a healthy way without hitting mental burnout?
Great question. Still struggling with that. Hit burnout all the time. Kay, what you were talking about, how you kind of replaced one addiction with another one, is very real. cross addiction is what they call that, where you remove alcohol and then you want sugar, or you are overspending, or you're, you know, watching too much porn or whatever it is. Like if you have that kind of ism where you have an addictive brain, then you tend to find other things to sort of fill the void, because really that's what it is wanting to escape and wanting to satiate and self-soothe. And so turns out my thing that I do to fill the void is work. I am a workaholic. I am a full-blown workaholic. And my health and my mental health definitely suffers from it. And that's something that I am still struggling to get under control. I am obsessive, and that is part of being an addict, is having an obsessive brain. And I think in America, especially, it's like rewarded for being, you know, a workaholic or whatever, and encouraged even. But I am, you know, it's like a daily struggle for me, where it's like I have to just remember to like feed myself and like take a second and be still, or, you know, go for a walk, move my body, whatever it is. And I really have to like put that in my calendar, or it's not going to happen. And one of the things that does help me is being in a 12-step program again, is like, that gives me, you know, I'll attend a 12-step meeting, and that gives me an hour of my day. I don't go every day, but, you know, a few hours a week where I'm like, okay, I'm here to just focus on my mental health. This is not about winning. This is not about achieving anything except serenity, and helping other people. So that has kind of been the only constant for me that has kept me grounded and kept me from losing my mind.
Another drug of choice is watching Bonnie's TikToks. So her workaholism kind of pays dividends for it. Helps people.
Happy to help. Okay, good. I'm doing my part.
I also discovered last year, coming out of the pandemic, one thing that I really never thought I was in the cards for me was an antidepressant. I started an antidepressant a year ago, June, and it has been it was sort of like someone just like gave me
it's like turn lights on, huh?
Yes, it was like, it's like, why have I been living so, like, I just again, it takes what it takes. And like, I was inspired by a series of, you know, one of my bedevilments is I have a rage monster inside me that can cause just as much damage as taking drinking a handle of vodka sometimes. Like, I can pay the same kinds of consequences for my anger. And mostly it's, but as a baseline, it's just like eating me alive from the inside. And I just found eventually that, during the pandemic and not being able to do some of the things that I do to feel better, like that, I just came to the conclusion that I wasn't right. I wasn't right in the head. And because I'm sober, and because I can feel things and understand things, and, most of the time, A plus B equals C, it sometimes takes me a long time to figure out that math, but like, talk to my doctor. And she was like, let's look at an antidepressant. And it was like a game changer. Like, why didn't I do this forever ago?
I have to second that. Medication has definitely helped me immensely and changed my life. It's something that I've been on and off of since high school. But I think it's, it doesn't have to be forever, but like, if you're really down and well, here's the thing. Like, if you are struggling with depression and anxiety, like serious, like, I'd try cutting out alcohol first. That's the first step. And I don't understand why more doctors don't say that, because it's like, when you add in, an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication on top of all of the chemicals that you're flooding your body with and all the imbalances that you're going to have from using and drinking. Like, how the hell are you supposed to know how you actually feel when you're constantly already altering your mood? So I would say, like, first step before you even like think about that, because like it could have interactions with if you're drinking or using or whatever. Like, first step is to stop drinking and using and see how you feel. And then if you still, after that amount of time, or even if you, whatever, it can work either way. I mean, I was on antidepressants when I was still drinking and using and stuff too. But you know, if you're depressed, like, alcohol is a depressant. So maybe like take that out first.
Yeah.
And I will also point out that there are certain drugs and alcohol that with certain psychiatric medications will just counteract completely. So you can keep taking the antidepressant and you're going to keep smoking weed or drinking, and it's as if you're taking a sugar pill. So
Totally.
it's just not something that's been effective.
Yeah, just cancels each other out.
Yeah, I definitely agree that something that should be that should be discussed more is a change in like diet and exercise and alcohol and drug use, and then medication should be a topic of discussion as well. The other thing I just wanted to mention that you both mentioned in terms of being in a 12-step program is that idea that all 12-step programs are very different. So you might go to one on a Tuesday and one on a Thursday, that one has a religious connotation and the other one is the higher power is this earth that we live on. And so finding a group of people in the 12-step world that really aligns with your views and your needs. There are certain groups that will not allow certain that require 100% sobriety. There are others that allow certain medications or whatever it might be. So being able to shop around a little bit, especially with the use of telehealth and video chats now, there really are so many new groups that have been able to form to support people in very similar ways.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like, meetings are very different. And it's just like, if you go out to a restaurant and it sucks, are you gonna never go to a restaurant again?
Right.
Like, no, like every restaurant's gonna be different, and it's gonna have a different vibe and different people and different food and different rules and dress codes or whatever the hell, you know. So every group that you go in is different. So there's really something for everybody. So, and like you said, with everything online now, like, you can literally find an online meeting any time of day, anywhere in the world. So,
And the litmus test that we generally use, or that I've heard used, and I think that this is really helpful. It's like, look for people who have what you want. You know, if you look at like a group of sober people and you're like, I want to be like that you're home, you know. But if you're looking around, you're like, I don't want my life to look like this. And, you know, it's looking for the people who have what you want in recovery.
I love that. Find your people first and foremost.
Yeah.
I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I do want to ask Ari, and this is for everyone as well, for folks watching that are maybe here for a friend or a family member or a bandmate or a colleague that they're worried about. What would you say? Like, what's the first step in trying to have that conversation?
It's a really tough question to answer because everybody's going to respond very differently. The number one thing is remembering that this is a process and it's not a success or failure. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be backward steps. There's going to be sudden jolts forward where we feel like we've just taken 100 steps forward, which sometimes can be even more detrimental than going backwards because then you didn't have the opportunity to learn from your experiences. Understanding that if you're going to a family member who is struggling, that the likelihood is they're probably going to push you away 1 to a million times before they're ever actually able to receive some help. Especially if they're struggling with addiction, it is more common than not that you might lose family members or friends because of an inability to recognize when it has become a problem. So as a family member, remember that if you're being pushed away, that's just common, and that there's supports out there. There's groups like Al-Anon where you can go and be supported as somebody who has had a family member who has struggled with addiction. And then just staying consistent. If it's a problem and somebody is coming to a family event and they're under the influence and you can't have them around, It's okay to set that boundary and stick very firm to it. Sometimes setting a very firm boundary might upset the person, but it's also going to show a level of love and respect that you need to set that boundary, and it's part of the way that the relationship is going to shift. So just my number one thing is remember that this is a process, and you're going to feel like you're doing it wrong most of the time. You're going to feel like you're doing it right some of the time, and that's going to kind of keep you going. But when you are struggling the most and you feel like you really hit your last step, like that's when reach out. There's supports out there for everybody. There's so many programs come through Backline. You honestly, in many cases, you can go on Google and look up like supports for family members of alcoholics, and that's how you might find Al-Anon or something. And just believing that there's got to be another answer out there. So just don't give up on the people that you love, because if you give up on them, there's a strong chance that they might give up on themselves.
I agree. I agree. And I also, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bonnie.
I also just wanted to say, you know, I spent many years trying to save other people that didn't want to be saved. And so it's also really important to not lose yourself in trying to save everyone. All you can do is offer your support and know that, so that they know that you're there when they're ready. But you know, you can't fix somebody else. You can't save somebody else. You can hold boundaries that might make their life a little more uncomfortable. Like Kay, your story about your ex-husband and everything, like that is really a great example of how like drawing a boundary for someone can literally save their life and change it for the better. So not being afraid to do that if necessary, but I'm what they call a double winner, where I am also a codependent person that has addicts in my life that I've tried to save. And that has also been really destructive in my life, and something that I've had to have a lot of help with and do a lot of therapy and everything else. So it's easy to lose yourself in other people too. So just like be conscious of that too. It's not your job to save people. All you can do is draw your boundaries and offer support. And when they're ready, they'll be there.
I've heard that phrase. I just want to finish with this one thing. Is I once heard, you can't follow people in the dark to save them. Stand in the light and let them see you.
Will you repeat that?
Don't follow people into the dark to save them. Stand in the light and let them see you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. I feel like that's the perfect place to wrap up this conversation, but I really just want to say this. I know our community is going to feel this, so I'll just echo the sentiment of thank you both so much for your vulnerability and your honesty, and this conversation will save lives. So just know that it's very meaningful and impactful. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. And also, you know, just want to thank Ari and Arielle for being here. And for everyone watching this, like, thank you for taking the time out to join in on the conversations. If you are struggling and you need help, please visit backline.care. All of the resources are free and available to anyone in the music industry and their families. So you don't have to be an artist. You can be on the touring crew. You can be working at the music venue, the security staff. All of the help is completely free. And also visit sonafoundation.com also for free resources. If you're a songwriter, a creator, there is help. So thank you again so much, everyone, for being involved. It's an honor to speak to you.
Thanks for having us.
It was
Yeah.
great to be here.
Thank you so much, Bonnie and Kay and Ari and Terra. And I wish everybody a happy holiday season. And we just passed Thanksgiving. We're on our way into the other holidays. And so with this conversation in mind, I just wanted to, say also just take extra care with yourself and the people that you love. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.